In the name of Allah, who is the most beneficent and the most merciful. Dear learners, Noreen Nawaz is here once again with another English lecture of Intermediate Part 2 and it's Chapter 10 of Goodbye Mr. Chips from Book 4, which is composed by James Hilton. In this chapter, first of all, I'll tell you the important points and then read the text, and synonyms of all the difficult words will be shared with you too. And then in the end, you will come to know about important questions. So now, first of all, let's see the important points of this chapter. Meldrum died of pneumonia after serving Brookfield for 3 decades. Chips was made acting head. Ralston got appointed as headmaster, and Ralston was 37 years of age and glittering with first and blues. And Ralston announced the death of His Majesty King Edward VII, railway strike, and Brookfield boys patrolling the lines. Cricklade talking about meeting the strikers. Chips' faith in sense of proportion, Queen's Diamond Jubilee, Frenzied Edwardian Decade, Grayson and Titanic, and young Grayson's death. And now let's start reading the text. In 1900, old Meldrum, who had succeeded Weatherby as head and held office for 3 decades, died suddenly from pneumonia. And in the interval before the appointment of a successor, Chips became acting head of Brookfield. It means that Meldrum succeeded Mr. Weatherby in 1870 when Weatherby died, and he remained, means Meldrum remained head of Brookfield for 30 years. Decade is 10 years and 3 decades means 30 years. And in the interval till the arrival of the new head, the governors made Chips the acting head of Brookfield. There was just the faintest chance that the governors might make the appointment a permanent one. But Chips was not really disappointed when they brought in a mere youngster of 37, glittering with furs and blues and with the kind of personality that could reduce Big Hall to silence by the mere lifting of an eyebrow. It means that when Chips was made the acting head of Brookfield, he was not hoping that the governors would make him permanent head of Brookfield. And when the governors brought a man as head who was just 37 years of age, and he was having a personality which glittered, which was splendid with the you can say that with the distinctions in studies and in sports both. You can see here first and blues. Second word, do look at the screen, distinctions in curricular and extra curricular activities. So, and he was having such a personality, he was such a strong personality that he could change the big hall into silence. He could change the big hall to silence by the mere lifting of an eyebrow. Means mere means only, and lifting of an eyebrow means just a signal of an eye. Chips was not in the running with that kind of person. He never had been and never would be, and he knew it. He was an altogether milder and less ferocious animal. And the writer says that Chips was not disappointed with the appearance of this new man, because Chips was a soft and mild kind of a person, but this new head was a ferocious animal. Ferocious means fierce and wild. It means that new head was very much strong and strict and very much arrogant. Those years before his retirement in 1913 were studied with sharply remembered pictures. It means that the years from 1900 to 1913, Chips was having clear pictures of those years, right? A May morning, you can see last word on the screen, studied means adorned and decorated. A May morning, the clang of the school bell at an unaccustomed time, everyone summoned to assemble in big hall. right? Now, the first memory is that there was a May morning, and clang means ringing, right? You can see on the screen that the school bell rang and an unknown time. Unaccustomed means unknown at unknown time, and everyone was called. Summoned means called. Everyone was called to gather in big hall. There was a big announcement, and who did that announcement? Ralston, the new head. This is the name of the new head. The new head, very pontifical and aware of himself, fixing the multitude with a cold, presaging severity. Now, here is the character sketch of Ralston, who was pontifical. You can say it's arrogant and proud and conceited, and he was very much aware of his strong personality. Fixing means staring, multitude means crowd, and presaging is predicting, and severity is strictness. It means that he was such a man that when he called everyone, all the students in the big hall of Brookfield, he was staring the crowd of students in such a way that anybody could predict about his hardness, about his harsh personality. And what did he announce? You will all be deeply grieved to hear that His Majesty King Edward VII died this morning. Grieved means sad. He is announcing the death of King Edward VII. There will be no school this afternoon, but a service will be held in the chapel at 4:30. He said that school will be off, and his service, his prayer for this King Edward VII will be held in church at 4:30. And then another memory which Chips is having in his mind: a summer morning on the railway line near Brookfield, the railwaymen were on strike, soldiers were driving the engines, stones had been thrown at trains, Brookfield boys were patrolling the line, thinking the whole business queer, great fun. uh, Business great fun means they were taking it as queer. Chips, who was in charge, stood a little way off, talking to a man at the gate of a cottage, and young Cricklet approached. Please, sir, what shall we do if we meet any strikers? Now, another memory is about a railway strike. The railwaymen were on strike, and soldiers were driving the engines. Means the railway was under the control of army, and the strikers were throwing stones on the trains. And Brookfield boys were patrolling. This patrolling means moving about and wandering. So they were wandering the lines, and they were feeling it a great fun to see this strike. And Chips was looking after them, the Brookfield boys, and he was talking to a striker at the gate of a cottage. And young Cricklet, who was a student, approached, means he came to Mr. Chips, and he asked Mr. Chips, please, sir, what shall we do if we meet any strikers? Would you like to meet one? Chips asked him that would he like to meet one of the strikers. I don't know, sir. It means that boy didn't know how to meet a striker. God bless the boy. Chips thought that God bless the boy. He talked of them as if they were queer animals out of a zoo. It means Cricklet was talking about the strikers as they were queer, means strange animals out of a zoo. Well, here you are then. You can meet Mr. Johns. He is a striker. The person whom Mr. Chips was talking was a striker, right? And his name was Mr. Johns. And he says that you can meet Mr. Johns. He is a striker, and when he is on duty, he has charge of the signal box at the station. You have put your life in his hands many a time. It means the Chips wanted to tell that boy whose name was Cricklet that whenever the strikers were not on strike and when they are performing their duties, and particularly this man, Mr. Johns, he is the in charge of the a signal box, and you know that green signal means the train can move, and red signal means the train should stop. So it means whenever these railway men are on duty, we put our lives in their hands when we travel in the trains. Chips thinking it over. Afterwards, the story went around the school. There was Chips talking to a striker, might have been quite friendly the way they were talking together. Later on, when they came back to Brookfield, the Brookfield boys and everyone over there talked about Chips that he was talking to a striker. Actually, the whole Brookfield didn't approve this act of Chips, that he was talking to strikers. And Chips thinking it over a good many times, whenever Chips thought about this incident, always added to himself that Kathy would have approved and would also have been amused. He thought that no matter whole Brookfield had disapproved of that incident, but if Kathy were there, she would must approve this act of Chips, that he was talking to strikers, because always whatever happened and however the avenues of politics twisted and curved, you can see what is the meaning of twisted and curved. Uh, twisted and curved means complicated and ups and downs. You So, dear viewers, what does the writer want to say here? That however the avenue means way and path. It means that however the paths and routes of politics were complicated, he had faith in England, flesh and blood. It means that Mr. Chips was having strong faith in England nature. And this vision was given to him by Catherine Bridges. And in Brookfield as a place, and he believed in Brookfield as a place whose ultimate means final, and worth means value, depended on whether she fitted herself into the English scene with dignity and without disproportion. You know what is this disproportion? Disproportion means imbalance. If you remember, dear viewers, chapter number 6, where Catherine Bridges tried to persuade Chips for the mission school to come over there in Brookfield and have a soccer match, she said, Chips, that England isn't always going to be divided into rankers and officers. It means that now Chip's vision is so much broadened that he felt about Brookfield as a place whose ultimate worth depended on whether she means Brookfield, herself into the English scene with dignity and without disproportion. It means that Chips saw Brookfield as a place where there will be no disproportion, where there will be no inequality. He had been left a vision. Who had given him this vision? Vision means outlook, you can see, and disproportion is imbalance. Catherine granted him an outlook that grew clearer with each year, and with every passing year, that vision got clearer. Of an England, that vision about an England for whom days of ease were nearly over. It means from year 1900 to 1913, there were the difficult days for England, of a nation staring into channels where a hair's breadth of error might be catastrophic. England was facing such a time. Hair breadth means slightest, and error means mistake, and catastrophic, you can see the last third word on the screen. Catastrophic is disastrous. It means that England was facing such a time where a slightest mistake can be disastrous for whole of the nation. He remembered the Diamond Jubilee. Now here I would like to tell you what is this Diamond Jubilee. Beta, Diamond Jubilee we call a celebration of 60 years, right? There had been a whole holiday at Brookfield, and this was the Diamond Jubilee of uh, Queen Elizabeth. It was the celebration of a 60 years of her uh, of her era, of her age, right? And there had been a whole holiday at Brookfield, and he had taken Kathy to London to see the procession. It means that this event took place before the death of Catherine Bridges, and procession means march and parade of that Diamond Jubilee. That old and legendary lady sitting in her carriage like some crumbling wooden doll. Queen Elizabeth was sitting in her horse carriage like a shattering, and you can see what is the meaning of this crumbling. Crumbling is breaking. She was like a shattering wooden doll and sitting in that carriage had symbolized means she was representing impressively so many things that like herself were nearing an end. It means she was symbolizing all those things which are going to finish. It means that her time was going to be finished. Was it only the century, or was it an epoch? Now here I would like to tell you, century means just a simple period of 100 years, and epoch, in front of your eyes on the screens, epoch is era. It is a period, it is a reign marked historically, right? And the writer says, was the period of Queen Elizabeth an epoch, or was it just only the century? And then that frenzied Edwardian decade. Then there were 10 years, 10 frantic years of King Edward. You can see frenzied means frantic or insane, and were like an electric lamp. Those years were like an electric lamp that goes brighter and brighter just before it burns itself out. It means that before finishing, the Edwardian decade was frenzied, frantic, many insane features were there in those years. So here is the list of those features which marked that frenzied Edwardian decade, and you will have to learn them properly. Strikes and locks out. Everywhere there were strikes and lockouts. Champagne suppers. Champagne is a white wine. Suppers are the evening meals. And unemployed marchers. It means there was the problem of unemployment, Chinese labor, tariff reform. Tariff is, you can see on the screens, it's tax. HMS Dreadnought. Viewers, this Dreadnought is you can see the last word on the screen. Dreadnought is first battleship of UK, and HMS means His Majesty ship. Marconi, Home Rule for Ireland. Dr. Crippen. Dr. Crippen was a man who murdered his wife and tried to escape, but he was caught later on. Suffragettes, you can see what is this suffragettes. It is demanding right of vote for women. This also took place in that Edwardian decade. The lines of Chitalja, there were some issues of railways, and April evening. This is very important thing. Another important thing of this chapter. And April evening, windy and rainy. The fourth form, construing Virgil. That in that evening, the fourth form, construing means you can see on the screen the second word. Construe is explaining Virgil. This Virgil is a Roman poet, and Chip's fourth Roman class was explaining Virgil. Virgil, as I told you, that he was a Roman poet, not very intelligently, but class was doing this task not very actively, for there was exciting news. Exciting means thrilling. There was exciting news in the papers. In the newspapers, there was a thrilling news, and there was a student of Japes whose name was young Grayson, in particular, was careless and preoccupied. And that student, Grayson, was careless. It means that he was inactive. He was not at all attentive towards the lesson. And preoccupied means lost in thoughts. He was absorbed in his thoughts, a quiet, nervous boy. He was a nervous boy, and normally in routine, he remained quiet in the class. And what did Chips tell him? Grayson, stay behind after the rest. Chips asked him to stay behind when rest of the class went out of went out went outside. Then Grayson, and when the rest of the class went out, Mr. Chips said that, then Grayson, I don't want to be severe because you are generally pretty good in your work. Chips is telling him that he didn't want to be severe with Grayson because otherwise he was a very good boy in his work, and but today you don't seem to have been trying at all. And Chips noticed that thing, that he was inactive in the lessons. Is anything the matter? And he was asking his student that was everything okay? No, sir. As he was a shy and quiet boy, he was hesitant to tell him. Well, we'll say no more about it. Chips is telling that he won't, or rather, he wouldn't discuss this thing anymore. But what is he saying? But I shall expect better things next time. He here in these lines, he is telling him that he expected, he hoped that next time Grayson would not show that behavior. Now, what was that exciting news? We are going to know now. Next morning, it was noised. Noised means it became famous around the school that Grayson's father had sailed on the Titanic, and that no news had yet come through as to his fate. All of you must have heard about Titanic. It got destroyed. It got destructed on its first sail. And Grayson's father was in that ship, and that is the reason he was lost in thoughts, and he was preoccupied. He was not attentive towards the lesson because there was no news about his father's fate. Either he was alive or dead. Grayson was excused lessons. It means he got off day. For a whole day, the school centered emotionally upon his anxieties. What are these anxieties? Anxieties are worries and troubles, and whole school tried to sympathize with him. They stayed with him. Then came news that his father had been among those rescued. Rescued means saved, right? So finally, the news came, the happy news came that Grayson's father rescued and saved got saved in that sail on Titanic. Then Chips shook hands with the boy, means with young Grayson. Well, I'm delighted, Grayson. A happy ending. Chips is greeting him by saying that it was a happy ending. You must be feeling pretty pleased with life. And he is telling him that now he must be very much happy with whatever life has brought for him. Yes, yes, sir. And a quiet, nervous voice. These two lines need your attention, dear learners. A quiet, nervous boy. And it was Grayson Sr., not Junior, with whom Chips was destined later to condole. Destined means fated and doomed, and condole is console. It means that when Grayson's father sailed on Titanic, it was expected that he might be dead over there, and then Chips had to condole young Grayson. But fortunately, news came that Grayson's father survived over there. He was rescued. he was saved. But after some time, young Grayson, who was student of Chips, died, and Chips had to pay his condolences and his sympathies to his father, means senior Grayson. So here our lesson finishes, and I hope that you must have got each and everything and all the synonyms which I shared with you in a very good way. You must have got it. And now let's see what are the important questions. First important question is character of Ralston, character of Meldrum, who was Cricklet, what duty did the Brookfield boys do during the railway strike, what did Mr. Chips recall about the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Victoria, why was Grayson worried about in class, and what did Chips recall about the Edwardian decade? These are the important questions of Goodbye Mr. Chips, chapter 10. So thank you very much, my dear viewers, and kindly don't forget to subscribe to my channel, English with Noreen Nawaz. And here I finish my lecture.